Welcome. Today we're diving into something that is, no joke, the secret foundation for just about every successful company: job analysis. You can think of it as the architectural blueprint for your entire organization. I mean, without it, you're basically just winging it. And that, well, that almost never ends well. Let's get into why this is so critical.
So let me kick things off with a question for you. When you think about why a company struggles or even fails, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Is it a bad business plan? A lack of cash? Maybe poor leadership? Sure, those are all huge, but there's often something deeper, something more fundamental that can cause the entire system to just fall apart. And believe it or not, it all boils down to this one simple question. If you walk up to 5 different people doing the exact same job and ask them, "So, what is it you actually do?" and you get 5 completely different answers, you've got a problem. A big one. That's not a team, that's just a bunch of people working near each other. And that's where everything starts to go wrong.
Which brings us perfectly to our first point, the problem. When you don't have clearly defined roles, your organization isn't built on bedrock. Nope, it's more like a house of cards, just waiting for the slightest little gust of wind to come and knock the whole thing over.
And these are the symptoms, right? You see all these different problems and they feel disconnected, but they're not. It's a chain reaction. You hire the wrong people because you don't really know who the right person is. Then you can't figure out how to pay them fairly because what are you even paying for? Your training is a waste of money because you don't know what skills to train for. And surprise, surprise, people get confused, they get frustrated, and they leave. It all stems from that same weak foundation.
All right, so how do we fix it? How do we stop building with playing cards and start using bricks and mortar? Well, that's where our solution comes in. We need a blueprint, a detailed, thought-out plan for every single role in the organization. And that blueprint is called job analysis.
So what is job analysis really? The most important word on this slide is systematic. This is not, and I repeat, not a manager just jotting down a few notes on a napkin. It's a methodical, deep dive process. It's about understanding what a person does, how they do it, and what kind of person it takes to do it well. We're talking about painting a crystal clear picture. And what's really cool is that this whole process gives you 2 incredibly important but very different documents. On one side, you have the job description. That's the what. It's all about the job itself, the tasks, the duties. On the other side, you have the job specification. That's the who. This is the profile of your ideal person, the skills, the experience, the knowledge they need to bring to the table. You need both. One without the other is like having a car with no driver. Okay, so we know we need these 2 things, the what and the who. But how do we actually create them? Where does this information come from? Let's get into the nitty-gritty of actually laying the foundation.
The process itself is actually pretty straightforward. First, you have to be a reporter. You go out and gather information. You interview people who are actually doing the job, you watch them work, you send out surveys. Then you put on your detective hat. You sift through all that data to figure out what the essential tasks are. From there, you build the profile of the who. And finally, you write it all down in those 2 key documents we just talked about.
And when you're done, you end up with these incredibly valuable components. A job title? That's not just a name. It gives people a sense of place and importance. The key duties? That's the core, what someone actually does day in and day out. The required skills become your shopping list for hiring. And performance standards? Oh, that's the big one. That's how you define what a job well done actually looks like. No more guessing. All right, now we get to the really good part. Once you've laid this solid foundation of job analysis, you can finally start building the rest of your HR house. Let's take a look at how this one process supports pretty much every major HR function there is. Think about these 4 things: recruitment, compensation, training, and performance management. There are like the 4 main pillars holding up your entire people strategy. But as we're about to see, without that solid foundation we just talked about, these pillars are basically standing on quicksand. Let's start with recruiting. It's so simple, it's profound. How on earth can you find the right person if you haven't even defined what the right person looks like? It's like going grocery shopping without a list for a recipe you've never seen. The job specification is your recipe. It lets you write better ads, ask better interview questions, and make way smarter hiring decisions. Okay, next up, compensation. How do you decide what to pay someone? You can't just pick a number out of thin air. A proper job analysis lets you evaluate the complexity, the skills required, and the overall impact of a role. That's how you build a pay system that's not only fair and equitable, but one that you can actually defend if you're ever challenged on it. And what about training?
So many companies waste a fortune on generic training programs that don't really do anything. But when you've done a job analysis, you know exactly what skills are needed for a role. You can see the gaps between what your people can do and what they need to be able to do. That means you can create targeted, effective training that actually improves performance. And finally, my personal favorite, performance management. You know those awful, vague performance reviews where nobody really knows what they're being judged on? A clear job description completely eliminates that. It creates an objective standard. It's a clear agreement between a manager and an employee that says, here, this is what success in your role looks like. It's an absolute game changer for morale and productivity. So, when you bring this all together, you transform your organization. You go from that shaky, fragile house of cards to a solid structure that is truly built to last. The ripple effect of getting this one thing right is just enormous. In the end, it all comes down to these three powerful words. Your employees get clarity. They know what's expected of them. Your systems, from pay to promotions, are built on fairness. And when you have clarity and fairness, what you get is a huge boost in performance. This quote really just says it all, doesn't it? Indispensable foundation. It's not just another piece of HR paperwork. It is the bedrock. It's the starting point for everything else. If your job analysis is weak, everything you build on top of it will be weak too. And I'll leave you with this to think about. In our world today, jobs are changing at lightning speed, right? AI, remote work, everything's in flux. And some might argue that because of that, a static job description is useless. But I'd ask you to consider the opposite. In a world filled with so much change and uncertainty, isn't having a clear blueprint, even when you have to update more often, more important than ever before? Let me know what you think. Thanks for joining me.